You are listening to the new man beyond the macho jerk and the new age wimp. Your host is men's coach Tripp Lanier.
Do you think you can solve money worries simply by making more money? Do you think you need to struggle and endure self-criticism and pressure in order to be happy? And what's the most effective way to regain a sense of control when things get bumpy? Michael Neill is a world-renowned transformative coach and best-selling author. Today, we're going to talk about some of the life-changing ideas in his books, The Inside Out Revolution and The Space Within. After coaching for over a decade, I've noticed that many people still aren't happy or peaceful or fulfilled after they create the circumstances they thought they always wanted in life. This tells me that while we may be working and worrying about the circumstances in our life, it's our beliefs and our thinking that may need to be examined most. I asked Michael Neill to come on the show and discuss these topics because he addresses this head on. He challenges the way we think and view our lives and our problems, and it's not always comfortable. His solutions don't always seem practical. That said, give this interview a listen and see if any of the problems you're facing right now might simply be recurring beliefs and thoughts instead of the circumstances in your world. Here we go. Well, the first place I want to dive in with you is just it seems that when things start to feel out of control in our lives, our first response is to stress out. We've got to get in there. We got to get white knuckle things. We got to try and fix things. We get lost in a sense of urgency. Things get frantic, and even if we're trying to look like we've got it all under control. So I want to read this part of the book from Inside Out. Here it goes. You're talking about a pilot talking to the tower. He says, "Mayday, mayday, I've lost control of the plane. Please advise." And the tower says, "Take your hands and feet off the controls. I repeat, take your hands and feet off the controls." The pilot says, "Negative, tower. Repeat, I've lost control of the plane. I'm trying everything I can do to bring it back under control, but I just can't do it. This is a matter of life and death. Please just tell me what to do." The tower says, "This is a matter of life and death. Take your hands and feet off of the controls. Do it now." What are you really saying in this story?
Well, there's two parts, and the first is just to point out that our lives can't spin out of control. What spins out of control is our thinking. Life is just life, and everybody's life has bits that go the way you want them to and bits that go different to the way you want them to. But what makes it feel in or out of control is what's going on in your own head that you're reacting to. So the where that story actually comes from is a guy I knew who was a flight instructor, and he used to work on a Piper Cub was the plane, and a Piper Cub has a gyroscope in it. So it's got a self-correcting mechanism within the plane itself. So if you're when the kind of final flight test is you have to stall the plane and then restart it in the air. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of for your solo to get your pilot's license. And so this actually was based on an actual story where the guy said, he's in the plane, he's doing his test, he loses control of the plane. You've got to level out before you can start the engine. He can't level the plane out, and he's panicking, and his instructor's in his head, in his ear going, "Let go of the control." And he's like, that's the last thing he wants to do because the plane's going towards the ground. Right. And the reason the instructor was shouting at him was because the second he let go of the control, it allowed the self-correcting mechanism of the plane to kick in.
The self-correcting mechanism, I think that's where we're going to dive in here, is that you're saying that in our own mindset, a big part of this book is that we have a self-correcting mechanism in there. Is that right?
Yeah, the mind is designed for well-being. The mind is designed for clarity. The mind is designed to return to stillness. And we do all these things to try and quiet our mind or push our mind in a healthier direction or make it think this instead of that, not realizing that actually left to its own devices, the mind will always take us back to health. It will always take us back to creativity. It will always take us back to a place where we can get a fresh run at things.
So I want to work with this because I've done meditation retreats. I've experienced that, but there's also been nights where I'm laying there and I can't. My mind is not being still. Like I'm staring at the ceiling, and it's just things are flying around. And I know I'm not alone. I talk to people that are doing this. So there is this self-correcting mechanism. There is stillness within. What's going on here? Why do I have these two different experiences from time to time?
Well, I think there's two keys to it. One is what you started to say and then caught yourself, which is I just can't still. The impulse is always that we're supposed to be the ones who go in and fix it. That we somehow should be able to control our thinking. We should somehow be able to still our mind. We should be able to return to the state of meditation. That we are the actor. We are the cause. We are the, if it's to be, it's up to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is the exact opposite of allowing a self-correcting mechanism to do its thing.
Mm.
So it's like if you've got a, we used to call them whizzers, but just like a spinny top, and if you push it even a little, it goes off.
Mm-hmm.
And then it takes a little while to get back to center. And then you touch it a little in another way and it goes off. And then it'll always find its way back.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a Weeble. I don't know if you remember Weeble.
Yeah.
Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down.
Right.
So every time you touch the mind, every time you go in there and try and make it better, you're wobbling the Weeble.
And what are the ways that we're doing that, and even if we don't realize that's what we're doing? Because I've heard you touch on things. We try to still the mind, but like, what is that actually? What are we doing?
Well, we try to think positive, right? We try and go, oh man, I'm being really negative. We try and replace our negative thoughts with loving thoughts. We try and be less, think less horrible things. We try not to fantasize about the man or woman that we're not married to. We try not to think about things going wrong because we know we should think about things going right, or we try not to think about things going right because then it'll hurt later more if they go wrong.
Right?
We do so much. We're actually continually trying to fix our thinking.
I get the image of an aquarium. I remember when I was in middle school, and the science teacher had this aquarium, and basically it was it looked like snot. It was just this gross, disgusting thing. But the only way to get it to be clear was to leave it alone, was to just let it be quiet.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's true. Water's a great metaphor for the mind because we all know that whatever's happening on the surface, the deeper down you go, the more stillness there is. And we also know that the surface will get moved, but then it will return to still. And there's nothing you can do to quiet the mind that won't actually do the opposite. Like any attempt to quiet the mind noises it up. Now, ultimately, with meditation practice and various things, you can temporarily sort of like impose a stillness on it. But here's the other piece. For people who are interested in performance, for people who are interested in a richer life, for people who are interested in creativity, you don't want better mind control. You want more freedom of mind. You want the mind to be able to go wherever, because that's where new ideas come from. You don't want, if I work with a fair number of athletes, and a lot of them are golfers, and one of the things about golfers is they've all been taught they've got to have swing thoughts. They've got to somehow control their mind. And what the relief that the golfers I work with have is to see, no, that's actually going in. You want your mind to be able to do whatever the hell it's doing and still hit a perfect shot. Because otherwise you're paying attention to your mind and not to your golf.
Yeah. There's another piece here. We glossed over it, which is recognizing, I can't remember the words you used, but recognizing that we are not the conduit, or we're not the force of creativity. We're the conduit for that force of creativity. So we got to get out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, any artist at anything. And I mean, from music to acting to writing will describe their best work as, I was unconscious out there. Like that wasn't me. I don't know what happened. Something came over me. Right. So anyone who's performed at their peak knows that we only perform at their peak when we're not in the driver's seat. Now, that doesn't mean you abdicate any responsibility. It just means that it's 99% creative force, 1% you, instead of 99% you, 1% creative force.
Right. And that's a tough negotiation for that part of us that wants control, that is like, there's no way I'm giving this up. I'm white knuckling this thing. So in that moment, is it that we just stop taking action? Because I can imagine somebody sitting here going, I'm not going to stop taking action. I'm not going to be a bump on the log. What is it that person can do to flip things around in that moment, so he's not making things worse by, with his hands on the controls, so to speak?
Well. So this is the probably the hardest thing for people to get, but the thing that once you get it, everything else becomes easy. What changes your life is understanding how things actually work, not doing them better. And I'll use the example of the plane. Right? No matter how good you get at controlling the steering wheel, you will die if you don't understand that you have to let go of the control for the plane to level out. Mm-hmm. And if you understand you have to let go of the control for the plane to level out, you just will. Mm-hmm. Like once you know that's how it works, I mean, it's sort of the same as if you think that the hot water taps and cold water taps are reversed. You think the one on the left gives you cold water and the one on the right gives you hot water. You're going to keep getting burned until you understand which tap does what. Mm-hmm. And all the practice and all the discipline and all the lead with the left and motivational slogans you might give yourself are utterly unnecessary the moment you actually realize, oh, hot water's on the left. Mm. And so until somebody understands how the mind works, until they understand a little bit more about who we are and what we have available to us, they have no choice but to try their hardest. Mm. Once you understand how it works, it doesn't make any sense to try your hardest in the way that people do, because you can see that it's counterproductive. You can see that it's literally getting in your own way. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You're just mucking it up. Some of us get stuck in analysis. We're stuck. We're actually not taking action. We're actually not moving forward. There seems like I've been in that place too, where I'm seeking safety, I'm seeking security, I'm looking for certainty. And in those moments, I've found it really helpful to simply start and engage wherever I am. I think we're talking about, where am I coming from here? Is that right? Like, I can come from a place of this frantic, disengaged part of myself, or I can take the time, understand how things work, and come from that more grounded, centered place and let the work come through me. Are we moving towards that?
We might be, but there's kind of a presumption there, and forgive me for taking us here, but it kind of depends why you think you're alive.
What do you mean?
Like if I've decided that the purpose of life is to get stuff done, then then putting all of this conversation in the context of how do I get stuff done makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. But what you just talked about, that wanting that sense of certainty, that what most people want is a sense of peace and fulfillment, a sense of contentment and happiness, a sense of well-being that is pervasive. And if they knew they could have it, they would absolutely choose the well-being that is pervasive even when things aren't going great, not the one that comes and goes depending on circumstance. That doesn't come from getting better at doing stuff. Now, getting better at doing stuff has its own perks. It means you can do stuff better. Mm-hmm. But when we start to think that the two things have something to do with one another, that I've got to get better at doing stuff and I've got to get better stuff in my life before I can have the happiness, the well-being, the clarity, the peace of mind, we're screwed before we start.
The idea that my peace and well-being comes from how well I do things.
Right. See, here's the equation. If I think my peace and well-being come from how well I do things, then I put all my energy into getting better at doing things, which innocently takes me further and further away from the peace and well-being that are just sitting inside me, waiting for me to notice.
It's right there. It's always there.
It's always there. It's our nature. That was my first big epiphany when I made the switch from being a sort of an NLP coach and a traditional performance coach to doing the work that I do now with the Inside Out Understanding. It was seeing I had spent my whole life trying to get better at being happy, not seeing that all of that effort was based on not recognizing happiness was my nature.
You were getting too happy. You were going towards happiness instead of recognizing I'm already there. It's already here.
Right. We have this thing in America, the pursuit of happiness. Well, that's just a poorly languaged sentence, right? There is a pursuit of achievement. There can be a pursuit of following your calling. There can be a pursuit of doing what you love. But happiness is not something that comes to those that pursue it. It's something that gets noticed when you stop the chase.
I want to dive in. This is the other part of the book that I want to get to. I'm going to read from your book here. The idea of putting pressure on ourselves to strive for our goals now so that we can feel the rush of reaching them later is as bizarre and misguided a life strategy as hitting ourselves in the face because it feels good when we stop. This points to what is perhaps our society's most unproductive and ill-founded bias, the notion that happiness can only come via success and at the cost of struggle, stress, and sacrifice. In other words, according to this poorly conceived mathematical equation, struggle plus stress plus sacrifice equals success equals happiness. To simplify it even further, unhappiness equals success equals happiness, which ultimately leaves us with the oxymoronic formula, unhappiness equals happiness. We've got a lot of people out there that are addicted to goals, that are addicted to achieving and growth and doing things better. And if they're not striving or pressuring themselves to get somewhere, then they're somehow beating themselves up for being lazy, not moving somewhere. They seem to like they can't win either way. They're miserable from the constant criticism and scrutiny they pile on themselves, regardless of what they're doing. What we're talking about here, though, is recognizing that the happiness is already here. Can I just accept it as it is? How do you work with this?
Well, there's a metaphor I sometimes use. And if I want to get 5 miles downriver, I've got two primary strategies. I can, put on my walking shoes, put the boat on my head, and start walking down the dry riverbed. Or I can wait till the river fills with water, put the boat down, get in the boat, and let the water take me there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not talking about happiness as a replacement for creating. But by the same token, creating has nothing to do with happiness, and you only have to spend a minute in Hollywood or reading People magazine to see it. Right? That's the funny thing for me about living in LA is anyone who says you need self-esteem or that stuff leads to happiness. It's like I am surrounded by the counterexample on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is once you find that your well-being is always there waiting for you, and that becomes your come from, not why you're trying to do stuff, different stuff starts to appeal to you. You're no longer drawn to set goals that you think will bring you future happiness. You now get involved in creating stuff because you want to see it come into being.
This is what you're on the planet to do, is to create this.
Well, absolutely. That's kind of what I mean, where we had to go all the way back to why do we think we're on the planet?
Right.
Like if I'm on the planet in order to do what I need to do so that I can be happy, well, that's a tough game to play. Whereas if I get to enjoy my life, I get to live in well-being most of the time. None of us are 24/7. It doesn't seem to me we're designed to be 24/7 jolly, but we can have such a rich experience of life while we get involved in creation. I mean, when I think of my kids, right? We didn't create kids so that they could take care of us in our old age or because we thought they would make us happy. Mm. We created kids because how cool to see these little people come onto the planet. Mm. Like that's the possibility of creation when you don't have your well-being riding on it.
when you're not attaching your well-being to the outcome of these things, and you're riding that roller coaster. Oh, it's good today, I feel good. It's not so good today, I'm not feeling so good.
Yeah, so like when we do our Creating the Impossible courses, one of the reasons that we do Creating the Impossible is because you're going to fail. Like, that's the point.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so if you can fully engage in creating even when the odds are stacked so heavily against you that it's ridiculous, well, then you start to see, oh, creating is its own reward.
Right.
And it's no longer about, someday, one day, when I'll be happy when. It's, hey, I'm having an amazing life, and this is what I'm creating at the moment, and this is what I've created. And is it going to happen? I don't know, but I love getting up and working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have to deprive myself in order to get somewhere that I get rejuvenated by simply being in that creative process.
I mean, it was something I'd learned as a coach early on, is the number one reason people used to hire me was to get them to do things they didn't want to do.
Right.
And I did that. Like, I was good at it. And then one day I just thought about that and I thought, this is insane.
Yeah.
Why do you want to get better at doing what you don't want to do? And then I realized it's because people think they have to.
Yeah.
They think they can't be happy or successful unless they make themselves do what they don't want to do. And they don't see that actually the mind is designed for success.
Mm.
The mind is designed to help us find a way that works perfectly for us to get where we want to go, not to try and copy what worked great for somebody else.
Right. Right. And that's the difference, right? I'm not seeking the answers outside of myself. Okay, there's the path. That's what that guy did. He did it on a Thursday, and then he did it again on Tuesday. Okay, that's what I'll emulate what he did. I listen to myself. I go within to this place. I develop. I cultivate this. It's already there. I just connect. I connect to it. I remember this, and then I act from that place. What wants to be created as me, as this in my lifetime?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of there's two schools of success. And the primary one, school of teaching success, at least, is if I throw a brick through that window, there'll be a hole in the window. So if you take the same brick and throw it through your window, you'll have a hole in your window.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that would be true if success was a matter of throwing bricks through windows. But success is a series of thousands of choices over time. And there is no formula that is so thorough that it maps out all 1,000, 10,000, 30,000 choices that you're going to have to make between here and creating what you want to create.
Mm-hmm.
So what you actually need is not somebody else's map. What you need is a really good compass.
Mm-hmm.
And you need a lantern because it's dark out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
In other words, the future is not bright, or the future doesn't exist yet. So if you are carrying a lantern, right? I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald who said that writing a novel is like driving cross country in the dark with headlights on.
Mm-hmm.
You can see a little bit ahead, but you can't really see what the road's going to do up ahead. So there's no point in trying to work all that out or get somebody to tell you about that.
Or wait to get dry.
Or wait till it lights up, because
Right.
that's not how it works.
Right.
But if you've got good headlights, and what waking up to what's inside us does is it takes all the crud off the headlamps so that they shine further. We can see further. Well, then you get really comfortable driving by lamplight,
Mm-hmm.
driving by headlight, and you're not scared about the unknown and about the future in the same way, because that's how it works. I won't see it till I see it, but I'll see it in plenty of time to react.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It's not supposed to be some other way. This is just
Right.
it. This is how it is.
Yeah, this is not a character flaw that I don't know how it's going to work out. This is reality.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's some people that, like, if I'm feeling uncomfortable, if I'm dealing with uncertainty, then I must be doing something wrong. I must be off. I'm looking at these other people, all these successful. It seems so simple, and it's like looking at pictures of those photoshopped images of women and thinking that's reality. But um, I'm so glad you bring this up, because some people think there is something wrong with them if they're dealing with some form of uncertainty in life, instead of recognizing that's it. There it is.
Well, and I think there's two parts to that at least. One on Easter, we took our youngest to Universal Studios, and we always loved going on the Universal tour. But it was just the most interesting thing was the facades, the building facades. That you see these buildings that look so real and that you recognize from movies and TV shows, and then the bus goes around the back and there's nothing there.
Yeah,
it's just wood and paint and nails. And the problem with judging how it's going for you against how it looks like it's going for someone else is you're comparing your insides to someone else's outside. And I've worked with enough people who are, super successful, top of their game, and people who are just struggling to know they're all dealing with the same crap.
Well, that leads me into the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I this past week I had two conversations with two different men. Both were struggling with their thinking around financial security. So one guy, he's almost broke. He's worrying about how to pay next month's bills. The other guy makes over $1 million per year. He's sick of his career, but he can't imagine living his life without being financially successful. So he's not willing to risk anything. So he's feeling stuck in his job because he's afraid to leave the big paycheck he's already getting. Both of these men were very triggered, very scared by the thinking that they're having about that's related to money and finances. That's what they were thinking it was about. So how do we work with these guys? Because I know these aren't the only two guys, and I know that there's a lot of others that are listening, and they can relate to one or both of these guys. So go ahead.
Well, I wrote a story in one of my earlier books that I called The $100 Million Man, because I had a client whose net worth was $100 million at the time that I worked with him. And he said to me in one of our first sessions, Michael, every day I wake up and wonder if today's going to be the day that I lose it all. And I was devastated, because I believed up until that point at some level that there was a certain amount of money which would solve my money problem.
You'd be exonerated. You'd be free from worry. This is you reached the
and my number was like 5. It wasn't 100. So and it was just somehow I got this wasn't individual difference. This wasn't I just happened to be talking to a neurotic guy. Money can't solve money problems, because money problems aren't money problems, they're thought problems. Because we don't feel money, we feel thought in the moment. And when you start to understand, and look, this is the essence of the inside out understanding. We live in the feeling of thought in the moment, not the feeling of circumstances. So if we don't understand that, we turn on the cold tap again and again and again and wonder why it's not giving us hot water. We manipulate our circumstances as best we can to make them the way we want them, and then wonder why we still feel uncomfortable or scared or nervous or tense or whatever it is that we feel, or stressed or pressured.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you start to see, okay, stress is an inside job. Pressure is an inside job. There is no pressure inherent in life. There is no stress inherent in life. There's life and there's thought. And thought is, sometimes people hear this, we're living in the feeling of our thinking, and they go, oh, so I tell myself it's just a thought. Well, no, that's like telling yourself, oh, it's just nuclear energy. Like, this is powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is our entire experience of life is made of this creative Play-Doh that we call thought. So it's true, but that doesn't mean that you can dismiss it. It just means you need to become, you need to develop a facility with the inner world as rich or better than the facility you're developing in the outer world.
So I need to develop a facility to recognize the pressure I'm feeling, the stress I'm feeling is what is a result of what I'm thinking. And now I also need to develop the skills to go and do what it is that I want to do financially. But those two things are separate.
Those two things are separate, and they support one another. So there's an old analogy. H.G. Wells, who, the 19th century Victorian writer, wrote things like The Time Machine and what was his other big book? Oh, I don't remember. But H.G. Wells, most people know who H.G. Wells is. He talked about the dangers of mankind and technology. And he said the danger of the way... The pace at which technology develops beyond man's own personal evolution is like having monkeys at the wheel of motor cars. The technology is dangerous in the hands of a monkey, even though that same technology might be fine in the hands of a trained driver. So yes, technology is fantastic. Yes, learning to create is fantastic. Getting better at creating things in the world, getting better at selling, getting better at whatever it is that you do. But if you do that without getting at least as far in your own evolution, in your own understanding of the human condition, of what it is to be a human being and how the mind works, you're going to be a chimpanzee behind the wheel of a motor car, and it's not going to go well.
You're still trying to find safety, even though there's $100 million in the bank, basically.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna, this car is out of control. Let me try going faster. Maybe that'll help.
Mm-hmm. No, not yet. I need to go a little faster.
Right? No. 100 million didn't do it. Maybe 200 million. No. Still, no. It's even worse. Okay, maybe 300 million. It's like no. Stepping on the gas is never going to slow down your car, ever. And that actually is kind of profound. It's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Tell us about the space within your new book. What's you got something coming out here in May? What are you talking about in that book?
So in the Inside Out Revolution, I really wanted to look to the philosophy and the understanding of how the mind works. That everything is created from the inside out, that we live in the feeling of thought in the moment, not the feeling of circumstance, and the implications of that for how we live our lives. In the space within, I'm looking at, well, who are we? So the space within is introducing you or reintroducing you or waking you up to that deeper potential within you, that spiritual nature. And it's completely non-religious, it's completely non-denominational, but it's one of these things that is true of every human being. So I use the analogy in the book of Bill Gates coming to you for business coaching. And at first you're like, well, why would Bill Gates come to me for business coaching? And then you realize he's got amnesia. He doesn't remember that he's Bill Gates. And the question is, do you spend your time sharing your 7 strategies for business success, or do you spend your time trying to wake him back up to who he really is? Well, that's us. We run around disconnected from our spiritual birthright. We run around disconnected from the strength and power within, from the life force within, from the intelligence within. And we try and get strategies to deal with it, to create, not realizing that the second you wake up to your inner light, the second you wake up to that intelligence within you, the second you bring your genius to life, you don't need the strategies anymore. You already know what to do. And if you don't know, you'll know when you need to know. And so that's what the space within is pointing to in different ways, and looking at how that impacts your confidence, your performance, how that impacts the way you are in relationship, how that allows for just way higher levels of creativity, and just the impact that has across the board when people start to wake up to that, not at the cost of your humanity, but at the core of it.
Here's the ground that you come from. Here's where you're creating your life from. And if you forget this stuff, if you forget that this is who you are truly, life's really freaking hard.
It really is, and it really feels like you need all those strategies for success and all those practices and all that stuff, and then you wake back up to who you are. And it's not news. Like, people might not like the language around it that I use, but everyone knows that feeling of coming home. And going, oh, God, where have I been?
Right. Oh, that. So that's the space within. That book comes out in May. Is that right?
May 3rd.
May 3rd. Okay. And the book we've been talking about today is The Inside Out Revolution. You can get that now at your local bookstore or Amazon. And you can find out more about Michael Neill at michaelneill.org. Michael, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
If these interviews are helping you, then please visit The New Man on iTunes and leave us a positive review so others can discover the show more easily. Thanks for listening.